Stop defending the rewrites until you see how Season 4 treats Triss and Yennefer's core identities. We are dissecting the erosion of their complex agency and proving that forced conflict is replacing the sophisticated political maneuvering fans actually love. This is not just an adaptation anymore. It is a total character assassination. If you have ever found yourself in a comment section argument about Netflix's The Witcher, if you have ever felt the hot flash of rage when the show butchers a beat from andrzej Sapkowski's books, if you have ever sat through a season finale wondering how the people behind the camera could miss the point of the source material this badly, then you already know the pattern we are about to unpack here. For 4 years, Netflix has taken one of the most beloved fantasy franchises of all time, a series of books with a rabid global fan base, a trilogy of video games that defined a generation of RPG gaming, and systematically chipped away at everything that made it special. They started small, cutting side characters, condensing timelines, smoothing out the sharp edges of Sapkowski's morally gray world to fit a more palatable streaming fantasy mold. Then they got bolder, rewriting core character arcs, inventing entire plot lines that never existed in the books, sidelining the heart of the story to focus on generic action set pieces and cheap drama. Then came the nuclear bomb. Henry Cavill, the only person on set who actually cared about the source material, the man who fought tooth and nail to keep the show faithful to Sapkowski's work, walked away. And with his exit, any last remaining thread holding the show to the heart of The Witcher was cut loose. Now, we are staring down the barrel of Season 4 with a new Geralt, a new creative direction, and a set of leaks, official synopses, and showrunner interviews that paint a picture so grim, so unrecognizable, that even the most optimistic fans have thrown in the towel. And the worst part of it all, the unforgivable sin of this upcoming season, is what they are doing to Yennefer of Vengerberg and Triss Merigold, the two women who are the beating heart of the entire Witcher saga, the two characters who carry the emotional weight of the story, who drive the political plot of the later books, who are some of the most complex, iconic female characters in all of fantasy literature. Netflix is not just changing them. They are not just cutting corners on their arcs. They are erasing them completely. They are taking everything that made them special, everything that made them human, everything that made them legends, and throwing it in the garbage to make room for cheap drama, for forced conflict, for the same tired, misogynistic fantasy tropes that Sapkowski spent his entire career subverting. And if you find yourself typing a comment right now about how we should give the show a chance, about how adaptations can change things, about how we should wait until the season airs to judge, stop. Just stop. We have 3 full seasons of evidence to show us exactly how this creative team treats the source material. We have official statements from the showrunners about their plans for Season 4. We have set leaks from reliable industry insiders. We have casting calls that confirm exactly which characters are being sidelined, which arcs are being gutted, which core identities are being thrown out the window. This is not a case of us jumping to conclusions. This is a case of us looking at a 4-year pattern of destruction and recognizing exactly where it is heading in the show's own established canon from the first 3 seasons, in official interviews from the cast and crew, in verified set leaks and synopses from reputable entertainment outlets. No guesswork, no exaggeration, no fanfiction, just the cold, hard truth about what Netflix is doing to the soul of The Witcher. We're going to start by breaking down the unshakable lore foundation of these characters, and how the show's push for a streamlined narrative is stripping away every ounce of their complexity. We are going to dive deep into the total erosion of Yennefer's matriarchal agency, how the show is taking one of the most powerful women in fantasy and turning her into a passive side character in her own story. We are going to unpack the complete flattening of Triss Merigold's moral ambiguity, how the show is erasing her defining trauma, her political power, her entire identity, to turn her into a one-dimensional plot device for the main trio. We are going to expose how the show has turned the Lodge of Sorceresses, the terrifying shadow government that controls the entire continent, into a hollow, petty, meaningless plot device, stripped of all its menace, all its intelligence, all its narrative weight. And finally, we are going to wrap it all up by explaining exactly why this creative team's obsession with surface-level drama and shock value is not just ruining the show for longtime fans, but is also making it completely uninteresting for new viewers too. We are going to ask the hard question, whether this show can ever be course-corrected, or if the damage they have done to these iconic characters is already permanent. But before we get into any of that, we need to talk about exactly why these changes are not just creative differences, not just a fresh take on the material, but total character assassination. Let us start with the basics. Character assassination is not just changing a character's hair color, or cutting a side plot, or even altering a key story beat. Character assassination is when you systematically erase the core defining traits of a character, the things that make them who they are, the motivations that drive every choice they make, the trauma that shapes their worldview, the values that define their moral code. It is when you take a character who is defined by their intelligence, their agency, their unshakable will to control their own destiny, and turn them into a passive, reactive, helpless side character who exists only to support the male lead. It is when you take a character defined by their moral complexity, their messy humanity, their struggle between idealism and pragmatism, and turn them into a one-dimensional, perfect, boring plot device with no inner life at all. It is when you take a character who is a legend in their own right, who has their own story, their own goals, their own legacy outside of the male protagonist, and reduce them to a love interest, a drama engine, a background piece in someone else's story. That is exactly what Netflix is doing to Yennefer and Triss in season 4. And it is not the first time they have done it. We've already seen the warning signs over the first 3 seasons. We saw it in season 2, when the writers took Yennefer, a woman who would burn the entire world down before she let anyone hurt Ciri, and had her betray Ciri, try to sacrifice her to get her magic back. A plotline so out of character, so antithetical to everything Yennefer stands for, that the fanbase revolted. We saw it in season 3, when they sidelined Triss Marigold for entire episodes at a time, when they erased the defining trauma of her character, the Battle of Sodden Hill, when they reduced her to a side character who pops up only when the plot needs a quick magic fix, or a cheap love triangle beat. We saw it in every season, when they took the Lodge of Sorceresses, the most brilliant, ruthless, powerful group of women in the entire series, and turned them into a bunch of bickering mean girls who cannot stop stabbing each other in the back long enough to accomplish anything. The show has been chipping away at these characters for years, but season 4 is where they finish the job, where they erase the last remaining bits of the characters we know and love, and replace them with generic, hollow, unrecognizable shells. The official synopsis for season 4 could not make this clearer if it tried. It frames the season around Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri as a found family, traveling the continent together, fighting monsters, running from the forces that want to destroy them. That sounds nice on paper, right? A heartwarming story about a family sticking together through hard times. But here is the problem. That story has nothing to do with the books, nothing to do with the core arcs of Yennefer and Triss, nothing to do with the political drama that drives the entire second half of the Witcher saga. In the books that season 4 is adapting, the time of contempt and baptism of fire arcs, Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri are not traveling together as a happy little found family. They are separated, each on their own journey, each fighting their own battles, each driving the plot forward with their own choices, their own agency, their own goals. Yennefer is not following Geralt around. She is not reacting to his choices. She is the single most important player in the entire political landscape of the continent. She is protecting Ciri, outmaneuvering the Lodge of Sorceresses, outthinking the Nilfgaardian Emperor, going toe-to-toe with the Wild Hunt, all on her own. She is the driving force of the story, not a passenger. Triss Marigold is not just popping in to help the main trio. She is a core member of the Lodge of Sorceresses. She is shaping the political future of the Northern Kingdoms. She is fighting for her ideals, making messy, complicated choices, dealing with the trauma of her past. She has her own story, her own agency, her own legacy outside of Geralt and Ciri. But the show is throwing all of that away to focus on a generic found family road trip, to make Yennefer and Triss supporting characters in Geralt's story, to strip them of their agency, their complexity, their core identities. And the worst part is, the showrunners are out here acting like this is an improvement, like they are fixing the books, making the story more accessible, more streamlined, more emotional. But they are not fixing anything. They are breaking it. They are taking a story that was revolutionary for its time, for its complex, powerful, unapologetically female characters, and turning it into the same generic, misogynistic fantasy slop that we have seen 100 times before. They are taking characters that subverted every tired trope in the book and shoving them right back into those tropes. For what? for cheap drama, for shock value, for views, for a quick streaming hit that will be forgotten in a year, and the fans are the ones who lose. The people who fell in love with these characters, who saw themselves in Yennefer's fight to control her own destiny, in Triss's struggle to hold on to her idealism in a cruel world, in the Lodge's unapologetic grab for power, in a world that hates and fears powerful women. We are the ones who have to watch as Netflix takes these characters we love and grinds them into dust. And if you are still sitting there thinking that we are overreacting, that we should wait and see, that adaptations can change things and still be good, let us be clear. There is a difference between a creative adaptation that changes details to fit the screen, while honoring the heart and soul of the source material, and what Netflix is doing here. Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy changed a lot of details from the books. It cut characters, condensed timelines, altered plot beats, but it never lost the heart of Tolkien's work. It never erased the core identities of the characters. It never turned Aragorn into a passive side character, or Galadriel into a one-dimensional love interest. That is what a good adaptation does. It honors the source material, even when it changes things. Netflix's The Witcher is not doing that. It is not honoring the source material. It is actively spitting on it. It is taking the heart and soul of the story, the complex female characters, the sharp political commentary, the moral grayness, and throwing it all away to make a generic monster of the week fantasy show with a little bit of cheap drama thrown in to keep people watching. And season 4 is where this rot reaches its peak, where the last remaining bits of Sapkowski's vision are erased completely, where Yennefer and Triss are reduced to nothing more than background characters in a story that they should be leading. This is not just a bad adaptation. It is a total failure of creativity, of respect, of basic storytelling. It is character assassination, plain and simple. And we are not going to sit here and pretend it is anything else. Over the rest of this series, we are going to break down exactly how this happened, exactly what they are doing to these characters, exactly why it is so unforgivable. We're going to root every single point in the books, in the show's own canon, in official statements from the creative team. No guesswork, no exaggeration, just the truth. Because these characters deserve better. The fans deserve better. And it is time someone called this garbage out for what it is.